There's something you've been feeling lately, isn't there? A quiet restlessness that whispers to you in the early morning hours, when the world is still asleep and your mind is finally free from all the noise. You look around at your life, and while others might see success, you know there's something more waiting for you. Something deeper. Something that goes beyond the endless chase for approval, the constant need to prove yourself, the exhausting game of keeping up appearances. You're tired of being loud about your struggles and silent about your dreams. You're tired of celebrating small wins on social media while your soul hungers for something truly meaningful. You're ready to stop performing your life and start living it with the quiet confidence of someone who knows their true worth. What you're feeling isn't dissatisfaction, it's readiness. It's your spirit recognizing that you've outgrown the version of yourself that needed external validation to feel valuable. You're becoming someone who understands that real wealth, lasting wealth, doesn't announce itself with fanfare. It moves in silence, builds in shadows, and reveals itself only when the foundation is unshakable. I am Solomon, and 3,000 years ago, I discovered something that changed not just my wealth, but my entire relationship with abundance. I learned that there are 7 unmistakable signs that appear when a person is truly ready to receive prosperity. Not the kind that comes and goes with market trends, but the kind that builds dynasties and leaves legacies. These aren't motivational platitudes or get-rich-quick schemes. These are spiritual and psychological markers that indicate your inner world has aligned with the frequency of true abundance. When you recognize these signs in yourself, you'll understand why some people seem to attract wealth effortlessly, while others struggle despite their best efforts. If you've been sensing that you're on the edge of a breakthrough, if you've been feeling called to something greater than what you've settled for, then this message has found you at exactly the right moment. Your next chapter is about to begin, and it starts with understanding these 7 signs. Subscribe now, because what I'm about to share with you will fundamentally change how you think about wealth, success, and your own potential. This isn't just another video. This is your invitation to step into the person you were always meant to become. Introduction to the path of silent wealth. You sit there every morning, drinking your coffee, scrolling through your phone, watching others celebrate their victories while you quietly wrestle with a feeling you can barely name. It's not envy. It's not even dissatisfaction. It's recognition. Deep in your bones, you know you're meant for something more significant than the life you're currently living. Yet every time you try to grasp it, every time you chase the conventional path to success, it slips through your fingers like sand. I understand this pain because I lived it 3,000 years ago. Before I became the richest man in history, before kings traveled from distant lands to witness my wisdom, I was a young man who felt the weight of destiny pressing against his chest, suffocating him with its promise and terrifying him with its demands. The difference between those who break free from mediocrity and those who remain trapped isn't talent, luck, or even opportunity. It's understanding that true wealth operates on frequencies that most people cannot hear. Ancient wisdom teaches us that prosperity is not a reward for good behavior or a prize for hard work. It is a natural consequence of internal alignment. When your soul frequency matches the frequency of abundance, wealth flows to you as naturally as water flows downhill. But here's what modern society doesn't want you to understand. This alignment cannot be achieved through external methods. No amount of networking, positive thinking, or strategic planning can substitute for the deep, uncomfortable work of spiritual preparation. Picture a seed buried deep in dark soil. To the untrained eye, that seed appears dead, worthless, forgotten. The soil around it seems empty, barren, without promise. But beneath the surface, in the silence and darkness, the most miraculous transformation is taking place. The seed is not fighting the darkness, it is using it. It is not struggling against the pressure, it is converting it into strength. This is the path of silent wealth. While others chase the light, making noise about their efforts and demanding recognition for their struggle, you learn to love the darkness of preparation. I remember the night everything changed for me. I was alone in my chambers, overwhelmed by the responsibility that had been placed on my shoulders. My father David had left me a kingdom, but I felt like a child trying to wear his father's armor. The advisors expected me to make decisions that would affect millions of lives, and I felt completely unprepared. In that moment of complete honesty about my inadequacy, I made a choice that would define not just my reign, but the entire trajectory of human understanding about wealth and wisdom. I could have asked for military might to crush my enemies. I could have requested gold to impress my allies. I could have demanded long life to enjoy my position. Instead, I asked for something that seemed almost foolish to everyone around me: wisdom to discern between good and evil. That night, I chose internal preparation over external advantage, and that choice opened floodgates of abundance that I could never have imagined. This is where most people fail in their pursuit of wealth. They operate from a servant mindset, always asking what they can get from the universe, always demanding that circumstances change to accommodate their desires. But kings think differently. Kings understand that you don't get what you want, you get who you are. The universe doesn't respond to your desperation or your demands. It responds to your readiness. The transition from servant to king happens in silence, in the moments when no one is watching, when no one is cheering, when no one even knows you're working. It happens when you stop asking why you don't have what you want and start asking who you need to become to receive what you're seeking. This shift in question changes everything, because it moves you from a position of powerlessness to a position of absolute control. Most people approach wealth like they're standing outside a locked door, banging on it, demanding entry, growing frustrated when it doesn't open. But the door to abundance is not locked. It only opens from the inside. You must first enter the inner kingdom of wisdom, discipline, and spiritual maturity. You must become someone who can handle wealth without it handling you, someone who can possess abundance without being possessed by it. The secret code of wealth that I will share with you is not a strategy or a technique. It is a transformation. It is the recognition that prosperity is not something you achieve. It is something you become. When you truly understand this, when you stop chasing wealth and start embodying it, everything changes. The same opportunities that once passed you by will now seek you out. The same people who once overlooked you will now compete for your attention. The same universe that once seemed indifferent to your dreams will now conspire to fulfill them. Your financial destiny is not determined by your circumstances, your background, or even your current resources. It is determined by your willingness to undergo the inner transformation that makes you a worthy vessel for abundance. This transformation requires courage because it demands that you face parts of yourself you've been avoiding. It requires patience because it unfolds according to divine timing, not your personal schedule. And it requires absolute honesty because you cannot transcend what you will not acknowledge. The path of silent wealth begins with a simple recognition. You are not who you think you are, and you are capable of far more than you have ever imagined. But to access this potential, you must be willing to die to the version of yourself that seeks approval, that chases quick fixes, that believes wealth is something external to be captured rather than something internal to be cultivated. Sign 1: loving silence more than approval. There's a moment that comes to every person destined for greatness, a moment so quiet and seemingly insignificant that most people miss it entirely. You're sitting somewhere, maybe in your car before walking into work, maybe on your couch late at night when everyone else is asleep, and suddenly you realize something profound. You prefer this silence to the noise of other people's opinions about your life. You prefer the company of your own thoughts to the exhausting performance of being who others expect you to be. This realization terrifies most people because they mistake silence for loneliness and solitude for failure. They rush to fill every quiet moment with distractions, with other people's voices, with the constant validation that comes from being seen and heard and approved of by others. But you've begun to understand something that separates future kings from eternal servants. Silence is not the absence of power, it is the presence of truth. When I think about the foundation of all true leadership, all lasting wealth, all meaningful influence, I think about silence. Not the silence of the weak who have nothing to say, but the silence of the strong who have learned to listen. In the depths of your solitude, away from the applause and the criticism, away from the expectations and the judgments, you meet the version of yourself that exists independent of other people's opinions. This version of yourself holds wisdom that no advisor can give you, strength that no crowd can provide, and clarity that no amount of external input can match. The world is full of people who make decisions based on how those decisions will be perceived rather than whether those decisions are right. They choose careers that will impress their parents rather than fulfill their purpose. They make investments that will make them look successful rather than actually build wealth. They speak words that will gain approval rather than communicate truth. These people become slaves to public opinion, and slaves, no matter how well they perform, never become wealthy in any meaningful sense. But there's another type of person, rare and powerful, who has learned to value their inner voice above the outer chorus of expectations. These people make decisions that seem strange to others because those decisions are based on internal wisdom rather than external pressure. They say no when everyone expects them to say yes. They invest in things that others can't understand. They take actions that seem to contradict common sense but align perfectly with uncommon wisdom. I learned this lesson in the most unlikely place, my own bedroom in the middle of the night when God appeared to me in a dream. He offered me anything I wanted. Imagine that moment. Here was the creator of the universe, offering to grant any request I could conceive. My advisors would have wanted me to ask for military might. My people would have wanted me to request prosperity for the kingdom. My enemies would have expected me to demand their destruction. But in that silence, removed from all external expectations, I heard my own heart clearly for perhaps the first time. I asked for wisdom. I asked for the ability to discern between good and evil, to understand the deeper currents that move through human hearts, to see beyond the surface of situations to their true nature. This request pleased God so much that He not only granted my request, but added riches and honor that I had not even asked for. The silence had guided me to make the one choice that would unlock everything else. The silence test reveals everything about a person's readiness for true prosperity. Can you sit alone with your thoughts for 15 minutes without reaching for your phone, without turning on music, without calling someone to fill the void? This simple exercise exposes the level of your self-awareness and your comfort with your own inner landscape. Those who cannot tolerate silence cannot tolerate truth, and those who cannot tolerate truth cannot make the kinds of decisions that create lasting wealth. In silence, you discover that your need for approval is actually a form of poverty. Every time you modify your authentic desires to gain someone else's validation, you trade a piece of your power for a moment of acceptance. This transaction always leaves you poorer because you're exchanging what is uniquely yours for what is commonly available. Anyone can give you approval, but only you can give yourself authentic direction. The person who loves silence more than approval develops an unshakable center. When criticism comes, and it always comes to those who dare to live authentically, it cannot destabilize you because your sense of worth is not dependent on external feedback. When praise comes, it cannot corrupt you because you understand that applause is just noise, pleasant but ultimately meaningless compared to the deep satisfaction of aligned action. This doesn't mean you become antisocial or dismissive of others' perspectives. It means you develop the ability to hear input without being controlled by it. You can consider advice without being enslaved by it. You can appreciate encouragement without being dependent on it. This emotional independence is one of the most valuable assets you can develop because it allows you to make decisions based on wisdom rather than fear, on truth rather than comfort, on purpose rather than popularity. The marketplace rewards authenticity in the long run, even when it punishes it in the short term. People may initially resist your refusal to conform to their expectations, but they will ultimately respect the strength it takes to remain true to your inner compass. More importantly, opportunities that are truly aligned with your highest purpose will be attracted to this authenticity like metal to a magnet. When you love silence more than approval, you stop wasting energy on the exhausting work of impression management and redirect that energy toward the profitable work of character development. You stop asking what others want to hear and start asking what needs to be said. You stop wondering what will make you popular and start focusing on what will make you powerful in the truest sense of that word. The universe conspires to support those who have learned to support themselves, who have developed the inner resources to withstand both failure and success without losing their center. This inner stability is the foundation upon which all lasting wealth is built, because wealth without wisdom is just a more expensive form of poverty. Sign 2, desiring wisdom more than profit. Every morning you wake up and face a choice that will determine the trajectory of your entire day, and eventually, your entire life. You can chase the money, or you can chase the understanding. You can focus on what you can get, or you can focus on who you can become. Most people choose the money, and that's exactly why most people never experience true wealth. They mistake the shadow for the substance, the effect for the cause, the fruit for the root. I watch people destroy their lives pursuing profit without wisdom, and it breaks my heart because I understand the seductive power of immediate financial gain. There's something intoxicating about seeing numbers increase in your bank account, about being able to afford things you once only dreamed of, about having the temporary security that money provides. But profit without wisdom is like building a mansion on quicksand. It looks impressive from the outside, but it's destined to collapse. When I was given the opportunity to ask for anything from the creator of the universe, I faced this same choice in its purest form. I could have asked for gold, silver, precious stones, vast treasures that would have made me wealthy beyond imagination. The kingdoms around me would have respected my power, feared my resources, sought my favor. But in that moment of divine opportunity, I understood something that has guided every decision I've made since. Wealth is not a possession. It's a responsibility. And responsibility without wisdom is just disaster waiting to happen. Wisdom is the ability to see the true nature of things, to understand consequences before they manifest, to recognize patterns that remain invisible to others. When you choose wisdom over immediate profit, you're not sacrificing financial success. You're ensuring it. You're building on a foundation that cannot be shaken by market fluctuations, economic downturns, or changing circumstances. Think of wisdom as spiritual financial education. It's not about learning techniques or strategies, though those have their place. It's about aligning your financial decisions with your deepest identity, your truest values, your highest purpose. Most people make money decisions based on fear, greed, or social pressure. They invest in things they don't understand, start businesses that don't align with their gifts, pursue opportunities that compromise their integrity. Then they wonder why their financial lives feel chaotic and unsustainable. But those who seek wisdom first ask different questions. Before they ask how much money they can make, they ask what kind of person generates that level of wealth. Before they pursue an opportunity, they evaluate whether it honors their authentic self or requires them to betray their values. Before they make an investment, they consider not just the potential return, but the character development required to manage that return wisely. I spent 7 years building the temple not because it took 7 years to gather the materials or organize the labor, but because it took 7 years for me to become the kind of person who could oversee such a sacred project. The physical construction was the easy part. The internal construction, the development of the wisdom and spiritual maturity required to steward something so significant, that was the real work. Modern culture has trained you to want everything immediately. You want wealth now, success now, recognition now. But the universe operates on a different timeline, one that prioritizes preparation over performance, character over credentials, wisdom over speed. When you align yourself with this deeper rhythm, when you become willing to invest time in becoming rather than just having, everything changes. The person who desires wisdom more than profit develops a supernatural ability to recognize opportunity before it becomes obvious to others. Wisdom gives you pattern recognition, the ability to see where trends are heading before they arrive, to understand human nature deeply enough to predict how people will respond to changing circumstances. This foresight is worth more than any amount of capital, because it allows you to position yourself advantageously while others are still trying to understand what's happening. Wisdom also protects you from the countless ways that money can destroy your life. I've seen people win the lottery and lose their families. I've watched entrepreneurs build successful businesses only to discover they'd sold their souls in the process. I've observed investors make millions in the market while making themselves miserable in life. Profit without wisdom is not just incomplete, it's dangerous. When you choose wisdom over immediate gain, you're not just making a financial decision, you're making a spiritual one. You're declaring that you trust the process of becoming more than the outcome of having. You're acknowledging that who you are is more important than what you own. This choice aligns you with forces that operate beyond the visible realm, that connect you to sources of guidance and support that remain unavailable to those who are only focused on material acquisition. The practical implications of this choice show up in every area of your financial life. Instead of jumping on every get-rich-quick scheme, you invest time in understanding fundamental principles of wealth creation. Instead of making decisions based on fear or greed, you make them based on careful evaluation and long-term vision. Instead of measuring success only in terms of numbers, you measure it in terms of the person you're becoming and the positive impact you're having. Wisdom teaches you that true wealth is not about how much you can accumulate, but about how much value you can create. It's not about what you can extract from the world, but about what you can contribute to it. This shift in perspective changes everything because it moves you from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset, from taking to giving, from fear to love. The most successful people in history, the ones who built lasting legacies rather than just temporary fortunes, understood that wisdom is the greatest investment you can make. It's the one asset that can never be stolen, that always appreciates, that generates returns across every area of your life. When you make wisdom your priority, profit follows naturally, but it follows in a sustainable, meaningful, deeply satisfying way that enhances rather than corrupts your character. Sign 3, the power of saying no. Right now, as you listen to these words, there's something in your life that you know you should refuse, but you haven't found the courage to say no. Maybe it's an opportunity that looks good on the surface but feels wrong in your spirit. Maybe it's a relationship that drains your energy but feeds your ego. Maybe it's a habit that provides immediate pleasure but undermines your long-term vision. Your ability to identify what this is and your willingness to act on that identification will determine whether you remain where you are or step into the abundance that awaits you. The power of saying no is the power of kings, and it's the one power that modern society systematically tries to strip from you. From childhood, you're taught to say yes to authority figures, to opportunities that seem advantageous, to social expectations that promise belonging. You're conditioned to believe that saying no is rude, that it closes doors, that it limits possibilities. But this is one of the most dangerous lies you've ever been told. Every yes you give without wisdom is a piece of your sovereignty that you surrender. Every time you agree to something that doesn't align with your deepest purpose, you weaken your ability to recognize and pursue what does align with that purpose. Your life becomes cluttered with commitments that don't serve you, relationships that don't nourish you, activities that don't fulfill you. You become busy but not productive, active but not effective, involved but not influential. I learned the power of no during the 7 years I spent building the temple. Every day, people came to me with suggestions for how to make the process faster, cheaper, easier. Contractors offered shortcuts that would save months of work. Advisors recommended compromises that would reduce costs. Foreign dignitaries suggested modifications that would serve political purposes. Each suggestion seemed reasonable in isolation, but I had to evaluate every proposal against the ultimate vision of what we were creating. Saying no to immediate gratification in service of long-term excellence became a daily practice. When I was tempted to rush the process because my people were growing impatient, I said no to their pressure and remained committed to the timeline that wisdom required. When suppliers offered inferior materials that would save money, I said no to the savings and insisted on quality that would last for generations. When critics suggested that the project was too ambitious, too expensive, too time-consuming, I said no to their limitations and remained faithful to the vision that had been given to me. This is where most people fail in their pursuit of wealth. They cannot distinguish between opportunity and distraction. They believe that every open door is meant to be walked through, that every invitation is meant to be accepted, that every possibility is meant to be pursued. But wisdom understands that the wrong opportunity at the wrong time is just as dangerous as no opportunity at all. The universe is constantly testing your commitment to your highest vision by presenting you with alternatives that seem good but aren't great, that seem profitable but aren't purposeful, that seem smart but aren't wise. Your response to these tests determines the level of abundance you're ready to receive. Those who say yes to everything never develop the focus necessary for mastery. Those who cannot refuse the good never create space for the great. Purpose requires patience, and patience requires the ability to delay gratification. When you say no to immediate pleasure, you say yes to lasting satisfaction. When you refuse short-term gain, you position yourself for long-term wealth. When you reject what everybody else is doing, you create space for what only you can do. This principle applies to every area of your financial life. The investment opportunity that promises quick returns but requires you to compromise your values, you say no. The business partnership that would be profitable but would require you to work with people you don't trust, you say no. The job offer that pays more money but takes you away from your true calling, you say no. Each no strengthens your ability to recognize and pursue your authentic yes. But saying no is not just about refusing external temptations. It's about refusing the internal impulses that sabotage your progress. No to the voice that tells you to give up when things get difficult. No to the fear that whispers that you're not qualified for your dreams. No to the doubt that suggests that someone like you doesn't deserve extraordinary success. No to the limiting beliefs that keep you playing small when you were born to play magnificently. The marketplace rewards consistency more than intensity, and consistency is impossible without the ability to say no to inconsistency. When you commit to a course of action and refuse to be distracted by every shiny object that crosses your path, you develop a reputation for reliability that becomes one of your most valuable assets. People learn to trust you because you do what you say you will do, when you say you will do it, regardless of what other opportunities arise. Your no also protects your creative energy. Every commitment you make requires not just time but mental and emotional resources. When you say yes to too many things, you dilute your capacity to excel at anything. But when you guard your commitments carefully, when you say no to the good so you can say yes to the great, you concentrate your power in ways that produce extraordinary results. The person who has mastered the power of no becomes selective in ways that seem almost magical to others. They turn down opportunities that others would kill for, not because they're arrogant or ungrateful, but because they're clear about their destination and committed to taking only the steps that lead there. This clarity and commitment create a magnetic force that attracts opportunities that are perfectly aligned with their purpose. Learning to say no is learning to honor your future self more than your present desires. It's recognizing that every choice you make is a vote for the kind of person you want to become and the kind of life you want to create. When you vote wisely, when you choose with long-term vision rather than immediate gratification, you build a life that reflects your deepest values and highest aspirations. The ability to say no transforms you from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who creates circumstances. Instead of being at the mercy of every opportunity that presents itself, you become the architect of your own experience, carefully selecting the materials that will build the life you truly want to live. Sign 4: Seeing value where others see disdain. You walk through the world surrounded by treasures that everyone else dismisses as worthless, and your ability to recognize this hidden value is what will separate you from those who remain forever searching for opportunities that are already obvious to everyone else. While crowds chase what's popular, what's trending, what everyone can see, you've developed the rare capacity to identify potential in the overlooked, the underestimated, the seemingly insignificant. This ability to see value where others see disdain is not just a useful skill. It's a form of spiritual vision that connects you to the creative force of the universe itself. It's the same vision that sees possibility in empty land, potential in struggling businesses, capacity in people who have been written off by society. It's the vision that built every fortune, launched every empire, created every innovation that has ever mattered. Most people are followers by nature. They wait for others to validate their choices, to approve their investments, to confirm their instincts. By the time something becomes popular enough for the masses to notice, the real opportunity has already passed. The early adopters, the visionaries, the ones who saw value before it became apparent to everyone else, they've already captured the lion's share of the benefits. But you've learned to trust your inner compass more than public opinion. You've developed the courage to invest your time, energy, and resources in things that others can't understand yet. This doesn't make you reckless, it makes you wise. You understand that today's common sense was yesterday's radical idea, that every breakthrough started as someone's ridiculous notion, that every transformation began with someone willing to see differently. I built my wealth not by competing for resources that everyone wanted, but by recognizing value in resources that everyone ignored. While other kingdoms fought over established trade routes, I developed relationships with distant lands that others considered too remote to be profitable. While other rulers focused on accumulating gold and silver, I invested in wisdom, in knowledge, in understanding that would generate wealth for generations. The Queen of Sheba traveled from the ends of the earth to witness what I had built, not because I had followed conventional wisdom, but because I had transcended it. She came to see the kingdom that resulted from seeing potential where others saw problems, opportunity where others saw obstacles, solutions where others saw only complications. This kind of vision requires humility because it demands that you remain teachable when others have stopped learning. You must be willing to study industries that seem boring to others, to pay attention to people who seem insignificant to everyone else, to invest time in understanding things that don't immediately appear profitable or prestigious. Your willingness to learn from any source, to find wisdom in unexpected places, becomes the foundation of your competitive advantage. The person who sees value where others see disdain develops an unusual relationship with failure and rejection. When others dismiss their ideas, they don't take it personally because they understand that most people can only recognize value in familiar forms. When their investments don't immediately pay off, they don't panic because they understand that true value often takes time to materialize. When their approaches seem strange to conventional thinkers, they don't conform because they know that conformity leads to average results. This perspective transforms how you interact with the marketplace. Instead of competing for the same opportunities as everyone else, you create opportunities that didn't exist before. Instead of fighting for market share in oversaturated industries, you identify needs that haven't been recognized yet. Instead of trying to beat others at their game, you invent new games where you're the only player. The ability to see hidden value also changes how you relate to people. While others network only with those who can obviously benefit them, you invest in relationships with people who have potential that hasn't been recognized yet. You mentor individuals who others overlook. You collaborate with businesses that others consider too small to matter. You build alliances with partners who others underestimate. These relationships become the foundation of your future success, because loyalty born from early belief is the strongest loyalty of all. This vision extends to your own development as well. You see potential in yourself that others can't recognize. You invest in skills that seem irrelevant now but will become essential later. You develop capacities that don't have immediate applications but will prove invaluable when circumstances change. You understand that the person you're becoming is more important than the person you appear to be right now. The marketplace eventually rewards this kind of vision because value, like truth, cannot remain hidden forever. What you recognized early, others will eventually see clearly. What you invested in when it was cheap will become expensive as demand increases. What you developed when others thought it was worthless will become essential when circumstances shift. Your early recognition becomes your lasting advantage. But the greatest reward for seeing value where others see disdain is not financial, it's spiritual. You become someone who adds value to the world instead of just extracting it. You become a creator rather than just a consumer. You become someone who sees possibility instead of just problems, who finds hope instead of just reasons to complain, who builds bridges instead of just pointing out gaps. This transformation in your vision transforms everything else about your life. You stop waiting for perfect opportunities and start creating opportunities from imperfect materials. You stop looking for guarantees and start building confidence through action. You stop seeking validation from others and start validating your own instincts through results. The person who can see value where others see disdain becomes invaluable themselves because they solve problems that others don't even recognize exist yet. They meet needs that others haven't identified. They provide solutions that others haven't imagined. This makes them not just wealthy but essential, not just successful but irreplaceable. Sign 5, understanding that everything is alone. There's a moment when true wealth consciousness begins, and it happens when you realize that nothing you think you own actually belongs to you. Your house, your car, your bank account, your investments, even your body and your life itself. Everything is temporary, everything is borrowed. Everything will eventually be returned to the source from which it came. This realization, rather than making you feel poor, actually makes you rich in ways that most people never experience. The person who believes they truly own their possessions lives in constant fear. Fear that they might lose what they have. Fear that others might take what they've accumulated. Fear that circumstances might change and leave them with nothing. This fear drives them to hoard rather than invest, to protect rather than expand, to close rather than create. They become slaves to their possessions instead of masters of their resources. But when you understand that everything is a loan from the universe, you develop a completely different relationship with abundance. You stop grasping and start stewarding. You stop hoarding and start circulating. You stop fearing loss and start focusing on wise management. This shift in perspective liberates enormous amounts of energy that were previously consumed by anxiety and redirects that energy toward productive and creative purposes. I learned this lesson in the most profound way during the height of my prosperity. My kingdom had accumulated wealth beyond measure. Gold flowed like water. Silver was as common as stones. Foreign dignitaries brought tribute from every corner of the known world. By any external measure, I was the richest man who had ever lived. But in the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts and my conscience, I understood that none of this abundance originated with me. The wisdom that allowed me to make profitable decisions, where did that come from? The circumstances that positioned my kingdom advantageously in the global economy, who orchestrated those? The talents and abilities that enabled me to lead effectively were those self-generated. The more honestly I examined my success, the more clearly I saw that I was not the creator of my wealth. I was its steward. This understanding changed everything about how I managed resources. Instead of asking how I could accumulate more, I started asking how I could steward better. Instead of measuring success by how much I could gather, I measured it by how wisely I could distribute. Instead of seeing wealth as a possession to be protected, I saw it as a responsibility to be managed for the benefit of all who were affected by my decisions. The gardener understands this principle intuitively. The gardener doesn't own the garden in any ultimate sense. The soil, the seeds, the rain, the sunshine, all of these come from sources beyond the gardener's control. But the gardener's role is crucial. The garden's productivity depends entirely on how well the gardener tends what has been entrusted to their care. The gardener who tries to hoard the harvest kills the garden. The gardener who shares the abundance ensures that the garden continues to produce. This principle applies to every form of wealth. Money that doesn't circulate becomes worthless. Ideas that aren't shared become irrelevant. Skills that aren't used become rusty. Even love that isn't given eventually withers. The universe operates on principles of flow, not stagnation, of circulation, not accumulation, of stewardship, not ownership. When you truly embrace the understanding that everything is a loan, you make decisions differently. You invest more boldly because you're not risking something that belongs to you ultimately anyway. You give more generously because you understand that generosity is how you participate in the flow of abundance. You worry less about loss because you know that your security comes not from what you have, but from your ability to attract and manage resources. This perspective also protects you from the corruption that wealth can bring. When you believe you own your possessions, you tend to identify with them. Your self-worth becomes tied to your net worth. Your sense of security depends on your level of accumulation. Your identity gets wrapped up in your achievements. But when you understand that everything is a loan, you maintain your sense of self independent of external circumstances. The person who understands that everything is a loan becomes fearless in ways that seem almost supernatural to others. They make investments that others consider too risky because they understand that the real risk is not losing money. It's failing to use money wisely while you have the opportunity. They start businesses that others think are too ambitious because they know that ambition in service of wise stewardship is never excessive. They give away resources that others would hoard because they trust that generosity creates space for more abundance to flow. This understanding also makes you more attractive to opportunities and resources. The universe prefers to work through people who can handle abundance without being corrupted by it, who can manage resources without being enslaved by them, who can steward wealth without being spiritually impoverished by it. When you demonstrate this kind of wisdom, more opportunities naturally come your way. The practical application of this principle shows up in every financial decision you make. Instead of buying the most expensive option because you can afford it, you buy the most appropriate option because it serves your purpose best. Instead of accumulating assets just to accumulate them, you acquire resources that align with your mission and values. Instead of spending to impress others with what you own, you invest in ways that create value for yourself and others. The person who truly understands that everything is a loan lives with a light hand and an open heart. They hold their possessions loosely, their plans flexibly, their success humbly. This doesn't make them passive or careless. It makes them wise and effective. They work as hard as anyone, but they work without the desperation that comes from believing their security depends entirely on their efforts. This understanding transforms not just your relationship with money, but your entire approach to life. You stop trying to control outcomes and start focusing on managing inputs. You stop fearing change and start embracing growth. You stop measuring success by what you can keep and start measuring it by what you can contribute. Sign 6: Wealth with purpose versus hoarding out of fear. Deep in your bones, you know the difference between building something meaningful and just accumulating stuff. Yet every day you witness people who have confused having more with being more, who have mistaken accumulation for achievement, who have traded their souls for the temporary security of a growing bank balance. The saddest part is watching someone achieve financial success, only to discover that they've become enslaved by the very wealth they thought would set them free. True wealth serves a purpose beyond itself. It's a tool for creation, a resource for contribution, a means for making the world better than you found it. But wealth pursued out of fear, wealth hoarded as protection against an uncertain future, wealth accumulated as a shield against inadequacy. This kind of wealth becomes a prison that confines rather than liberates, that diminishes rather than expands, that impoverishes the soul even as it enriches the bank account. I watch people work themselves to death accumulating money they're too afraid to spend, too anxious to invest, too suspicious to share. They tell themselves they're building security, but they're actually building a fortress of fear. They convince themselves they're being responsible, but they're actually being controlled by the very thing they think they control. They believe they're preparing for the future, but they're actually sacrificing the present on the altar of an imaginary tomorrow. The difference between wealth with purpose and hoarding out of fear shows up in how you make decisions about money. When you're building wealth with purpose, every financial choice is evaluated against your mission, your values, your vision for the kind of impact you want to make. Money becomes a vote for the world you want to create, an investment in the future you want to see, a tool for expressing your deepest convictions through concrete action. But when you're hoarding out of fear, every financial decision is motivated by anxiety about what might go wrong. You save not because you have a purpose for the money, but because having money feels safer than not having it. You invest not because you believe in what you're investing in, but because you're afraid of inflation, of losing purchasing power, of being left behind. You accumulate not because you have a use for what you're accumulating, but because more feels inherently better than less. During my reign, I invested enormous resources in building the temple, not because it generated financial returns, but because it served a purpose larger than my personal accumulation. I funded schools, supported artists, developed infrastructure, sponsored expeditions to distant lands. These investments didn't always make sense from a purely financial perspective, but they made perfect sense from the perspective of legacy, of contribution, of stewardship. The temple took 7 years and untold resources to complete. My advisors repeatedly suggested ways to reduce costs, to finish faster, to make the project more profitable. But I understood that this was not about profit. It was about purpose. We were not just building a structure. We were creating something that would inspire people for generations, that would serve as a center for wisdom and worship, that would demonstrate what becomes possible when resources are directed by vision rather than fear. This is why some people can have millions of dollars and still feel poor, while others can have modest resources and feel abundantly wealthy. The difference is not in the amount, it's in the purpose. Money with purpose feels alive, dynamic, meaningful. Money without purpose feels dead, static, burdensome. Purpose transforms wealth from a possession into a mission, from something you have into something you do. The person who builds wealth with purpose asks different questions. Instead of asking how much they can accumulate, they ask how much they need to accomplish their mission. Instead of wondering how to protect what they have, they focus on how to deploy what they have most effectively. Instead of fearing loss, they embrace investment. Instead of hoarding resources, they circulate them strategically. This approach to wealth creation attracts different kinds of opportunities. When you're clearly focused on purpose rather than just accumulation, people want to work with you, invest with you, partner with you. They trust your motives because your motives extend beyond self-interest. They believe in your vision because your vision includes their welfare. They support your success because your success contributes to their success. Purpose also provides natural boundaries for your wealth-building activities. When you know why you're accumulating resources, you also know when you have enough to accomplish your purpose. This prevents the endless, exhausting cycle of never having enough, always needing more, constantly comparing your accumulation to others' accumulation. Purpose gives you a finish line, a point of satisfaction, a place where you can say, "This is sufficient for what I'm trying to achieve." The hoarder, by contrast, can never have enough because fear has no logical endpoint. There's always another disaster to prepare for, another threat to guard against, another reason to accumulate more. The hoarder's wealth grows, but their anxiety grows with it, because the wealth is motivated by fear rather than purpose, by scarcity rather than abundance, by protection rather than creation. Wealth with purpose also creates a different kind of legacy. When your wealth is deployed in service of something meaningful, it generates impact that extends far beyond your lifetime. The schools you fund continue educating students. The businesses you support continue creating value. The causes you champion continue making the world better. Your wealth becomes a river that keeps flowing rather than a lake that stagnates. But perhaps most importantly, wealth with purpose transforms you as a person. Instead of being diminished by the responsibility of managing resources, you're expanded by it. Instead of being corrupted by the power that wealth provides, you're refined by using that power wisely. Instead of being isolated by your success, you're connected more deeply to others through the positive impact you're making. The practical application of this principle requires constant vigilance because the fear-based approach to wealth is seductive. It feels safe, responsible, prudent. But safety without purpose is just sophisticated poverty. Responsibility without vision is just organized fear. Prudence without mission is just sanctified hoarding. You must regularly examine your motives for accumulating wealth. Are you building resources to accomplish something meaningful, or are you accumulating assets to feel secure? Are you investing in your purpose, or are you just protecting against your fears? Are you creating value for others, or are you just extracting value for yourself? The universe supports wealth that serves a purpose beyond itself, because such wealth aligns with the creative, generous, abundant nature of existence itself. When your wealth-building activities contribute to the greater good, you tap into forces that go far beyond your personal effort or intelligence. You become a partner with the creative force of life itself, and that partnership generates results that exceed anything you could accomplish through individual effort alone. Sign 7: Discernment and Courage. You pray for wisdom, and then you hate the answers that wisdom gives you because wisdom never tells you what you want to hear. It tells you what you need to know. Wisdom reveals uncomfortable truths about people you trusted, about opportunities you were excited about paths you were committed to following. The person who is ready for true wealth has learned that discernment without courage is just sophisticated ignorance, that knowing what to do means nothing if you lack the strength to do it. Every day, you receive information that could change your life if you had the courage to act on it. Your intuition whispers warnings about people you shouldn't partner with, but you ignore those warnings because confronting the truth would be uncomfortable. Your inner wisdom highlights opportunities you should pursue, but you hesitate because following that guidance would require you to step outside your comfort zone. Your discernment reveals changes you need to make, but you postpone those changes because change is always initially disruptive. The gap between what you know you should do and what you actually do is the gap between where you are and where you could be. Most people live their entire lives in this gap, constantly receiving guidance they lack the courage to follow, constantly recognizing truths they're too afraid to acknowledge, constantly seeing possibilities they're too hesitant to pursue. I learned this lesson through the most painful experience of my reign. My discernment had been warning me for months about certain advisors whose loyalty had shifted, about alliances that were no longer serving the kingdom's interests, about policies that were popular but unwise. Every private moment of reflection confirmed what I intuitively knew to be true, but taking action would have meant confronting people I cared about, disappointing allies I valued, making decisions that would be unpopular with my subjects. For too long, I delayed the difficult conversations and avoided the hard choices. I told myself I was being diplomatic, that I was giving people time to change, that perhaps my discernment was wrong. But wisdom delayed is often wisdom denied. By the time I finally found the courage to act on what I had known for months, the problems had grown larger, the solutions had become more painful, and the cost of correction had increased dramatically. This taught me that discernment is not passive recognition. It's active revelation that demands immediate response. When wisdom shows you something, it's not showing you information for your entertainment. It's showing you truth for your action. The person who can receive guidance but cannot act on guidance remains exactly where they started, except now they're without excuse. Courage is not the absence of fear. It's the willingness to do what's right despite fear. When discernment reveals that you need to end a business partnership that's no longer serving your highest purpose, courage gives you the strength to have that difficult conversation. When wisdom shows you that you're in the wrong career, courage enables you to make the necessary transition even when the path forward is uncertain. When your inner guidance tells you to take a risk that others think is foolish, courage allows you to trust your own judgment over public opinion. The marketplace rewards people who can make difficult decisions quickly and cleanly. Businesses succeed when leaders have the courage to cut products that aren't working, to restructure departments that aren't performing, to pivot strategies when circumstances change. Investors profit when they have the courage to buy when others are selling and sell when others are buying. Entrepreneurs thrive when they have the courage to bet on their vision when others doubt their judgment. But courage in business is just an extension of courage in character. The person who cannot tell themselves the truth about their own weaknesses will never be able to make accurate assessments about market conditions. The person who avoids difficult conversations in their personal life will struggle to negotiate effectively in their professional life. The person who procrastinates on important decisions in small matters will be paralyzed when facing large matters. Discernment reveals not just external opportunities and threats, but internal areas that need attention. It shows you patterns in your behavior that are sabotaging your success, relationships that are draining your energy, beliefs that are limiting your potential. But discernment without the courage for self-confrontation becomes just another form of self-deception. The person who is ready for true wealth has developed the courage to fire themselves from roles they've outgrown, to break up with versions of themselves that no longer serve their highest purpose, to disappoint others when necessary to remain true to their authentic calling. This kind of courage is rare because it requires you to choose your future over your comfort, your potential over your current security, your truth over other people's expectations. Courage also means having the strength to protect what you've built. Success attracts people who want to use your resources for their purposes, who want to partner with you for their benefit, who want to associate with you for their advancement. Discernment helps you identify these people, but courage gives you the power to set boundaries, to say no when necessary, to prioritize your mission over their manipulation. The universe tests your commitment to your highest path by presenting you with choices that require you to choose between what's easy and what's right, between what's popular and what's true, between what's comfortable and what's necessary. These tests never stop coming because growth requires constant course corrections, constant realignment, constant recommitment to your authentic purpose. The person with discernment and courage becomes unstoppable because they can see clearly and act decisively. They don't waste time in situations that don't serve them. They don't invest energy in relationships that don't support their growth. They don't pursue opportunities that don't align with their values. This clarity and decisiveness create momentum that compounds over time, leading to results that seem almost magical to those who lack the same combination of vision and action. But perhaps most importantly, discernment and courage create a life of integrity, where your actions align with your values, your choices reflect your priorities, and your results demonstrate your commitment. This alignment generates a kind of personal power that money cannot buy, a confidence that success cannot shake, a peace that circumstances cannot disturb. Personal reflection and call to action. Sit with yourself now, in the quiet space between what you've just heard and what you're going to do with it. Because everything we've discussed means nothing if it remains just concepts in your mind rather than transformations in your life. The 7 signs I've shared with you are not abstract principles. They are practical diagnostics that reveal your readiness to receive the abundance that the universe is constantly trying to give you. Look honestly at your relationship with silence. Do you love it more than approval, or are you still addicted to other people's opinions about your choices? Can you sit alone with your thoughts for 15 minutes without reaching for distractions? Or does solitude make you so uncomfortable that you'll do anything to avoid it? Your answer reveals whether you're ready to make decisions from inner wisdom, or whether you're still enslaved to external validation. Examine your desire for wisdom versus your hunger for immediate profit. When faced with choices, do you ask what you can learn or what you can earn? Do you invest in your character development as much as your portfolio development? Are you building on foundations that will last? Or are you constructing success on the quicksand of shortcuts and superficial strategies? Consider your relationship with the word no. How often do you say it? How comfortable are you with disappointing others when their requests don't align with your purpose? Can you refuse good opportunities because you're committed to great ones? Or do you say yes to everything and wonder why you never excel at anything? Reflect on your ability to see value where others see nothing worth noticing. Are you looking for opportunities that everyone else has already discovered? Or are you developing the vision to recognize potential before it becomes obvious? Do you dismiss ideas because they seem small or strange? Or can you identify the seeds of extraordinary outcomes in ordinary beginnings? Think about your attitude toward your possessions. Do you hold them with open hands or clenched fists? Are you managing resources or are resources managing you? Have you confused being a steward with being an owner? And how does that confusion show up in your decisions about money, time, and energy? Evaluate whether you're building wealth with purpose or hoarding out of fear. What drives your financial decisions? Vision for what you want to create or anxiety about what you might lose? Are you accumulating resources to accomplish something meaningful? Or are you just gathering assets to feel secure? Finally, assess your combination of discernment and courage. Can you receive difficult truths and act on them quickly? Or do you avoid uncomfortable information and delay necessary decisions? When wisdom reveals what you need to do you do it immediately? Or do you negotiate with truth until it becomes convenient? These questions are not meant to judge you, but to awaken you. Every area where you recognize room for growth is an area where tremendous expansion awaits you. The person who can honestly evaluate themselves without defensiveness or despair is already demonstrating the maturity that abundance requires. The path of silent wealth is not about becoming someone different. It's about becoming who you truly are beneath all the conditioning, all the fears, all the limitations that have been imposed on you by a world that profits from your smallness. You are not meant to live a small life, to think small thoughts, to pursue small dreams. You are meant for abundance, for impact, for significance that extends far beyond your personal comfort. But this transformation requires more than understanding. It requires commitment. It requires that you take what you've learned here and implement it consistently, daily, regardless of how you feel or what others think or what circumstances suggest is reasonable. Wisdom without application is just entertainment, and transformation without action is just wishful thinking. Start where you are, with what you have, doing what you can. Choose one of the 7 signs and focus on developing it fully before moving to the next. If you struggle with loving silence more than approval, begin practicing 15 minutes of daily solitude until you can sit comfortably with your own thoughts. If you find yourself chasing profit more than wisdom, start investing equal time in character development and skill development. If you have trouble saying no, practice refusing one request each day that doesn't align with your highest purpose. The universe is waiting for you to demonstrate your readiness for the abundance it wants to give you. It's not waiting for you to become perfect, but it is waiting for you to become committed. It's not looking for your credentials, but it is looking for your character. It's not measuring your past achievements, but it is evaluating your present alignment with the principles that govern prosperity. Your next chapter begins with your next choice. Choose wisdom over comfort. Choose growth over safety. Choose purpose over popularity. Choose the difficult path that leads to extraordinary destinations over the easy path that leads to ordinary outcomes. The silent wealth you seek is not hiding from you. It's waiting for you to become the kind of person who can receive it, manage it, and steward it wisely. That person exists within you right now, waiting to be awakened, waiting to be expressed, waiting to be lived fully in every decision you make and every action you take. Right now, as these words settle into your consciousness, something is shifting inside you. It's subtle, like the first light of dawn that doesn't announce itself with fanfare but simply begins to illuminate what was always there, waiting to be seen. You feel it, don't you? That quiet recognition that you're not the same person who began listening to this message. Something has awakened. Picture a seed that has been buried in dark soil for what feels like lifetimes. The darkness wasn't punishment, it was preparation. The pressure wasn't meant to crush you, it was designed to activate the dormant potential within you. Today, that seed cracks open, not with violence, but with the gentle inevitability of something that can no longer be contained by its former limitations. The 7 signs we've explored together aren't just concepts you've learned. They're mirrors that have reflected back the truth of who you're becoming. Each sign you recognized in yourself was a key unlocking doors in your consciousness that have been sealed too long. Each principle you embraced was a stepping stone across the river that separates who you were from who you're meant to be. You're standing at the threshold now, not of an ending, but of a beginning that has no limits. The path of silent wealth isn't a destination you arrive at. It's a way of being you embody, a frequency you tune into, a dance you learn to move with rather than against. If you're ready to walk this path with others who understand what it means to build wealth in silence, to grow in wisdom, to live with purpose that transcends personal gain, then join this community by subscribing. This is where the real journey deepens. Your transformation has already begun, and what begins in silence always speaks the loudest in the end.